All right, y'all, welcome back and happy Thursday. It's time for day 2 of fall camp news, notes, and thoughts. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And we're going to start with the injuries just like we did yesterday. So there's no real updates here. Same players on this list. Outside of Jamal McCoy was out there. You could see him just kind of like going through some drills, going through some rehab work. And we talked about this in a just totally different video that he has been doing some straight line running. So he's at that final stage where he's working on getting in and out of breaks. And it sounds like he was going kind of like half speed, maybe not half speed, but not full speed. So y'all will see in some of these clips, if you look like in the background, y'all will see him. It's kind of like going through some of this stuff. But either way, once he gets up to full speed with it, which I would say that he's on pace with everything at this point, but he has to work himself up with the strength in his knee to get up to full speed, running sprints, which I think he's already there, but then also getting in and out of the breaks. If he can do that, if he stays on schedule with no setbacks, I still think that he's going to be back by that Georgia game. Jordan Thomas, he's out for the season. Cole Harrison, he's out right now. I think he'll probably be back at some point this year. Brazel's going to be back next week. Also sounds like Tennessee's going to be scrimmaging next week, so he should be back for that. That's going to be huge. Christian Gaz, he's doing the rehab stuff. Not quite sure what's going on with him. Miles Kittelman, limited, but so I'm actually doing some physical stuff versus the sled and things like that. So he's going to be back, I think, for the first game as well. So with all those things being said, let's talk about the players that got to speak to the media today. And it was all freshmen on offense, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to start with Travis Smith, freshman wide receiver. Been hearing a whole lot of positive things with him. Some of my personal takeaways is that him and Rah Jackson, they've been catching at least 100 passes on the jugs. Maybe not every single day, but now that fall camp has started, they will be doing that every day. So, just talking about this freshman or all these freshman wide receivers, there's some people that are still worried about them being able to come out and play as freshmen on this level. But just think back to last season, y'all. How many freshman wide receivers had a really good year on the Power 4 level? There's several guys. So it's more about it's not that hard. If you can do it physically, which these guys can definitely do it physically, then you can play if you have figured things out mentally. That's going to be my biggest thing with these guys is listening to them speak, understanding the work that they're putting in. They're there mentally, right? So if they're there mentally and physically, there's no reason that we should anticipate that they can't have a good year as a true freshman. It just doesn't really make any sense. So next, he talks about just focusing on small things, goes back to the mindset of these guys. And he also talks about, his speed has gotten better. So that was one of the other questions with some people with him coming out of high school. Now, I got to watch him play live. So he's a really big guy. Okay, I can tell you that. He's a tall, long guy. He has really good size. But, his speed, it might fool you just because he's so smooth, he's so fluid, takes longer strides. He talked about some of the staff members helped him out with his strides, so maybe shortened it up some, which will help you getting in and out of breaks and cutting and juking and all that. So, he's going to be perfectly fine. He's only getting better. Next, let's talk about freshman wide receiver Rah Jackson. So he got to talk to the media. He turns 18 this upcoming Tuesday. So for him to be 6'2", 210, one of the best looking physically one of the best looking wide receivers on this team, he's going to be a major problem the older that he gets and, all that good stuff. But, he pointed out that Ricky Gibson and Tyler Redmond were the toughest guys just as far as like the one-on-one stuff. So obviously those two players play at corner. Ricky Gibson, he's a vet. And then Tyler Redmond, who I've been hearing so many positive things with, he's a true freshman. So looking forward to him. But, he also kind of touched on what Travis Smith said that, man, they're catching anywhere from like 100 to 150, maybe 200 passes from the jugs every single day, just working on their hands. And he sees himself as more of like a jump ball threat. He said that, man, I know that I can body people. He can high point footballs. He's really long. He said that he might not be the fastest guy, but that's perfectly fine. If he knows how to use his body, if he already knows what his strengths are at only 17, going on 18, then just think about what he's going to look like towards the end of this year. So he's going to have both of these guys that we just talked about, I think that they'll have to play a lot for Tennessee in 2025 just because we don't have that many numbers. Next, let's talk about freshman offensive tackle David Sanders, 5-star coming out of high school. He should be our starter on that right side, but he said that he's been focusing on Tennessee's playbook, really like with the installs and things like that. He said that he was able to pick that up pretty quickly, but now he wants to learn what are the other players on that line doing. That's really going to help him too. And just kind of going back to my point with all these freshmen, they get the better details of how to be a pro, of how to get better. Yeah, you always can, maybe get better physically, but if you can get better mentally, that will expedite that whole process. So that's huge. And then he said that he's gained 38 pounds since he's been up on campus, and his target weight or his current weight is fluctuating from 305 to like 308. His target weight from the staff was 290, but he's past that obviously, so it just keeps on going up. I think he's probably fine where he's at as long as he can move around, which he said that he hasn't lost any speed or nothing like that. Actually maybe feels faster, feels stronger. As long as he's not losing speed, then he can maybe keep on gaining weight. But once he feels like, man, I'm kind of sluggish, I'm tired and all that, then you probably need to try to cut back. But 305 to 308, which is where he's at, I think he's probably going to be fine. And he also said that he feels better versus Don Bailey. We talked about his strength. So for me, watching him in that orange and white game, I was watching him closely, especially versus those vets. I thought that he held his own very well, but he actually said that, man, in spring, Don Bailey was kind of like pushing me around, but now he can anchor down. He feels a lot stronger versus him. So that's that added weight, right? Like once you add the weight, that strength comes. He's going to be perfectly fine. And Don Bailey plays strong side in for Tennessee, but he could also play D tackle for us. He's like close to 300 pounds. He's, I mean, if you can block him, especially like in a one-on-one situation, you can block most SEC linemen. If you can block most SEC linemen, then you can block most linemen on the Power 4 level period. So David Sanders will be perfectly fine. And he also said that Lance Hurd has been a great leader for him. And he's asking him to, tell him, hey, come on out, come on out here with me and get some extra work and take some extra notes and things like that. So just proud of this team, proud of these guys for standing up and trying to help everybody get better. Next, let's talk about freshman tight end, Deshaun Brame, who went from 218 once he came up on campus to 243, and he's actually shooting for 250. Now, if he can get there, like we said with David Sanders and some of these other players, if he can get there without losing any speed, then yeah. But I think that he's at a pretty good size. Like 243, that is like prototype tight end size for our system. But he can run the routes and do all those types of things. So that's huge. And he doesn't look fat either. Like he looks cut up. He looks jacked. So hopefully, things will work out for him. And he said that he loves Coach Abe. Also talks about really working hard on his block, and he said the footwork is one of his bigger things because he understands that most of the people that he has to block will be as big, if not bigger than him. So the fundamental part of it is going to be critical. That's huge for him to understand that part. And then he also said that he kind of like looks up to Ethan Davis. They're very similar with their skill sets. Ethan Davis was more like a pass catcher, and Brame is looked at as more of like a pass catcher. But I think that Brame, his blocking to me, just coming out of high school, you could tell that he could do it physically. So, we'll talk more about that room here in just a second. And then let's talk about wide receiver, Joakim Dotson. He is a freshman, so he came up late, didn't come up in spring like most players do. So him and Charles House are the only freshmen that came up after the spring. But he said that he feels kind of like caught up with all the installs because he was doing Zoom calls. He also said that Travis Smith, being one of the leaders, he was helping him out with those installs. And he, also ran the 400 meters in high school. So that's how he says that he's in much better shape and he's ready for fall camp. If you do any sort of track stuff, then the football stuff is going to be way easier because you run so much more in track. But 400 meters is probably the hardest race in all the track. And he also said that he was doing some like extra work and some extra training with those distance runners. So he's going to be perfectly fine. And, all these guys, they speak very, very well. And I'm just looking forward to seeing how will they play, once we get into the scrimmages and things like that. So next, let's talk about Jack Van Dorselier. Okay, he's a freshman tight end as well. And he said that he picked the number 3 because that's his mom's lucky number. So I thought that was pretty interesting. He takes a lot of pride in being physical. So that is definitely big. He's more of like a Miles Kitselman kind of a player where kid can run the routes, but he's more of like that physical blocker. And it does, to me, kind of feels like Jack looks more up to Kit, and Brame looks more up to Ethan Davis. But I think that that's cool, So next is, he talks about being ready for college because he played at South Lake Carroll. I think it's South Lake Carroll. It's a South Lake school out in Texas. So if it is South Lake Carroll, I think that that's in the Dallas area, but that's a powerhouse program. They run it like a college program, very similar to like Buford. But he said that he's ready for, he's been ready with everything that they've been doing as far as the practicing and the workload and all of that. That's always huge. And then he says that, or this is just me, actually. This is one of my own personal notes. He knows football very well. Like he was talking about a couple of things with how the team's how the defense is gonna try to spill them and all of that. So having that understanding, like it feels like all these guys do, that makes you so much better as a player. All right, now let's talk about Tennessee's secondary first and foremost. So a couple of notes here is that the theme of the day was about violence, and not just for Tennessee's secondary, but maybe like for the whole defense. That was one of the that was one of the themes that the insiders kept on bringing up. But they did a whole lot of just fundamental work with tackling, block shedding, so on and so forth. Obviously, they went through some coverage things. As far as the like starting groups and units, it was the exact same as it was yesterday. But to go a little bit further in depth, it does sound like the star players. You know, we talked about J Mac. He's the starting star while Bull's out. But number two was Marcus Gorey. So that's pretty interesting. And the staff is really high on Tyler Redmond, and I'm really high on Tyler Redmond. Known him for a very, very long time. He's going to be good. He can play for us as a true freshman playing at corner. So next, let's talk about quarterbacks because I know that y'all really want to hear about this. So Tennessee's quarterbacks, man. Biggest thing that I want to talk about here, really first and foremost, is that they were doing some pistol stuff. Now, we just put the video out yesterday, and we've talked about this pretty much since the end of last year. The Tennessee should probably try to run more pistol and things like that. That's very, very real. So doing more like bootlegs, more play action, like real true pro style stuff. It sounds like Joey Aguilar looked the best with that. And he should because he ran so much of that at App State. I'm going to keep on saying this. I think that he's going to end up winning that starting spot. I know that it's just day two, but I'm already starting to see some separation. But yeah, it sounds like he looks really, really good. Just throwing outside of the pocket, kind of throwing on the move, going to his right, to his left. Might have been, might have missed one or two passes, but for the most part, he was the most accurate. And then it sounds like the group as a whole really looked better versus yesterday. I think the exact same thing. They just everything. They looked way more comfortable. And we'll see what happens once the shoulder pads come on. They might have to take like a little bit of a step back on that first day, but the second day they should pretty much be really crisp. But I think we've got a great room of quarterbacks, honestly speaking. And then also sounds like Merck. Merck was up and down, but he looked pretty solid. GMAC flashed. But let me talk about Merck some, just because looking at him physically, talked about this yesterday. I think that he looks good. He's got some guns. We've just got a good looking group of quarterbacks. Obviously, GMAC still has to gain the weight, but he's going to be fine. Everyone knows that he's got the talent. So it's just about getting older, kind of like letting his body fill out. But once that happens, we should be straight. So we'll see, man. How long will it take for Coach Heupel to name that starter? I think he's going to wait, but they'll probably know, maybe not know 100% for sure. But after that first scrimmage, I think that what the depth chart looks like in practice moving forward, that'll be more of what it's going to be whenever the season actually starts, because obviously you have to try to get your starting units out there working as a unit. But for now, the quarterbacks definitely Joey and definitely Mark, they should both get opportunities working with the first and second teams. GMAC should get some, maybe a few opportunities here and there. But let's talk about Tennessee's offensive line. So the first group was the same as it was yesterday. So if you didn't hear about that, it was Lance Hurd at left tackle. It was Wendell Moy at left guard, William Satterwhite at center, Jesse Perry at right guard, and David Sanders at right tackle. Now, the second group today was the same as it was yesterday, too. So Jeremiah's Hurd sounds like he was the starter at left tackle. But interesting thing here is that Bennett Warren, who was at right tackle yesterday, he was working some at left tackle, too. So was that with the second group, or was that with the third group, or was it just like a mix? I don't know, but that's the main thing that I wanted to point out. Everything else was the exact same as it was yesterday. And the reason that I'm pointing that out is because, as we also touched on, Jesse Perry, who could play anywhere on Tennessee's offensive line, him getting the start right now at right guard and Sat being the starting center, I felt like Sam Pendleton is who they want starting at center, because they're looking at Jesse Perry and they're saying, wow, man, this is a guy that we just, we had to put him in our starting five. And I think so, too. He looks great. But what that tells me, since Bennett Warren has been working at right tackle and left tackle, is that they're looking for that swing guy. Like they want to have options for the backup tackle, because Jesse Perry would more than likely be that option. So I think that that's why Bennett Warren is kind of getting swung around in some different places. He starts off on that right side, because next year, obviously, David Sanders will bump over to the left tackle, and maybe Bennett Warren could be that right tackle for us in 2026. But saying all that just to say that we do have several options of players that so far for me have looked really good. I mean, they're just so well put together, and I'm starting to now see more people are seeing that same thing, that, man, we've got a lot of talent on that line. They're just much better athletes. We're seeing the outside zone block, and they look better doing that. Working as a unit, I think that their footwork, their foot speed is quicker, just everything. Like, they're just well put together. Everything that you're looking for. This was like a real like dominant SEC line, like not even just an SEC line. It looks like a dominant one. These guys look more like NFL offensive linemen, where the NFL offensive linemen, they're big, but they ain't sloppy. Our offensive line have not seen not one sloppy looking player. So that is huge. Great job. Shouts out to the whole staff for getting that room right. If that room is right, the rest of the offense will follow suit, especially with some of these scheme changes. Now let's talk about Tennessee's wide receiver room. It sounds like Travis Smith has just looked great, over the course of these first couple of days. He looked good today. He did have a drop where he had to do some push-ups, which is normal. But Mike Matthews, being that vet, comes over and does the push-ups with him. You have to love that. You have to love that. But also, there were some times where they're going through some drills and the coaches are mimicking press. So they're being physical with them. It sounds like Travis Smith slung Coach Polk to the ground, and y'all will see it throughout these clips somewhere. But that's big. Like, again, these are freshmen, but they're built and, physically and mentally like grown-ass men. So I'm not worried about those freshmen. I'm not worried about Tennessee's wide receivers outside of the just sheer numbers. We have to stay healthy just because we don't have that many bodies. And then also just a couple of other notes. I think that Rah looked really good. Seeing some of the different wrinkles with our system. It was actually on one of the clips, it was like Braylon Staley was lined up like in a pistol. He was lined up there first, and they moved him and had him like mimicking, doing like a motion and then just going out to the flats. I saw Jefferson kind of doing that same thing with the motion, going out to the flats. Quick game stuff will be there. We saw some slants, like we talked about, getting off press. And, three-step drop, throwing those fades with some of these bigger guys like a Travis Smith, Chris Browser once he comes back, Rah Jackson, those would be the big guys. But I also think that you could do it with Mike Matthews, who's about 6'1", and Braylon Staley, he's probably close to about 6 feet tall. You might not want to do it with him too much, but with some of like the quicker routes and all of that, just like underneath stuff. So, all these guys can take it and, make people miss. So take a hitch 20 or 30 yards. That's what Tennessee's been missing since 2022. Haven't seen too many players doing that, but we have plenty of guys who can do that. I think that, Weary, as a walk-on player, he's about 6'2", but he's really, really long. I saw him make a couple of good catches. Saw one drop, but then he came back with a really nice catch. So we have some good options. Tennessee's going to be fine with our wide receivers. Next, let's talk about Tennessee's running backs, man. I think that this room looks great, very well put together physically. And it sounds like they were out there catching some passes. And the top three, those three vets, they all looked really good from what the insider said. So Peyton Lewis, Bishop, and also Star Thomas. And it sounds like Bishop and Lewis were getting a lot of praise from Coach Sims, who is the running backs coach. So I would say that obviously those should be our two starters. But it's also good that that Star Thomas is, picking things up. And just as far as those freshmen, man, I'm so ready to see what they do in these scrimmage situations, because as I've said several times, we're just really, really deep there. And I think that we could let everyone see the field. I don't really see any reason that you just say, hey, these freshmen can't play, because both of them looked great. I think that both of them are probably ready. Now, again, we won't know till those pads come on. That's going to tell the tale for this whole team. It's all about how do they look once it's time to get physical, because this stuff here, there's a lot of folks who could go out there and do this type of stuff and they could look great. But once it's time to start thumping, you find out who the real football players are. I think that we got a team full of them, whole bunch of dogs. So just want to stay healthy. That's my biggest thing. But the talent, y'all, is definitely there. Just need to stay healthy. Now we'll talk about Tennessee's tight ends. So it sounds like Brame got a whole lot of reps. Okay, I saw this on at least one of the sites that he was just moving around everywhere. Felt like he was getting a ton of reps, which leads me to think that they want to see, man, hey, who are we going to use as our third tight end? Same situation there, just like Tennessee's running back room. You got plenty of bodies there. Let everyone play. Rotate, and let's not lose anybody to the transfer portal after this year. Now, last thing here is going to be with Tennessee's linebackers. I got to see a couple of clips of them, and I think that they look really good. Got to see those freshmen, both of the Jadens. They look, my goodness, do they look good, man. Like, it's just a different level of twitch. Violence was the theme here too. Punching at the football, just so much burst, so much pop. That room is gonna be incredibly good. Can't wait to see them put those pads on too. And I guess, you know what, one last thing. Let's talk about Tennessee's D-line. Didn't really get to see too much of them. Okay, there were no real notes. They're just going through their normal ones and twos. So we're gonna be back at practice on, I believe it's Saturday. So on Saturday, we'll come back and see. Hopefully we'll have some more notes about how, the whole front looked, and maybe some different spots that we haven't really got too many notes with. But obviously early on, it's about the quarterbacks. It's about Tennessee's offense, because that's where most of the question marks are. But yeah, I'm feeling good, y'all. It's only 2 days, but man, this team looks damn good. So those are my thoughts. Please share yours down in that comment section. And as always, please do make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. We might be coming back very close to 3 for Moa because he's going to be choosing his program. It's still down between us and Utah. Feels like it might be Utah, so I don't know if I want to do it live, but that one's going to be big. So hopefully y'all can join us for that as well. But again, please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be talking to y'all later on. Thanks. Peace. Thanks for watching, and please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel because that keeps us growing inside of the YouTube algorithm. And if you did like this video, here's another one that you might also enjoy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.